Hello, guys.
Hello, Valerio.
Hi.
Okay. So, can you take 3 minutes more, Valerio?
No. Yeah, we can wait like a few minutes, right? So, because I think it was like at 11, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We have already mailed the registered participants to join as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. So, how's it going for you?
It is great. So many students have registered from different institute, different countries. I hope it will be a great one.
Okay. Cool. So, I was thinking, so are we gonna have like questions like during also like the session? Because I was thinking like we could do also like do that. Like I don't know like if I can see the chat, but if believe so, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it is totally up to you. If you do not have any problems, so in between you can take the questions or after the webinar, or like say, as per the schedule that you have given, that 40 minutes the whole session and 20 minutes for question answer. It is up to you.
Yeah. So yeah, regarding like the presentation, I think it's going to be like around like 40 minutes, but I'm not totally sure about that. Could be like a little bit less, like a little bit more, depending. But I mean, like we can go just like I had, like no problem for me. Okay.
Okay, okay.
So are you guys all students or like mostly like students? So
Mostly we are, I mean, the group members of SCM group are students. Though we
mhm.
have few faculties from different institute, but mostly students.
Okay.
The research scholars, PhD and postdoc scholars, and UGPD students.
Cool. Cool. Oh, nice. So Steven says, like, I'm a recent grad who founded a startup. Yeah. Yeah, you'll see like that in a sense, like that's also like more or less like what I did. And I'll be talking about like this in the presentation. So what did you study, Steven? Oh, nice. Yeah, I also have a background in physics. So physics and astrophysics, really. So it was like my scientific background initially. Yeah. Very, very cool. Yeah, definitely a good base. Let's say learn further. Yeah, totally agree with that. It gives you like such deep understanding like into like how like, also like math works, but not from a mathematician point of view. I would say that's like it's great, but sometimes it feels like a little bit like too abstract, at least for me. But yeah, I think like physics like is a nice in between like pure like application and engineering and pure abstraction. So it's quite cool. Yep.
So I guess Valerio, it is 11 seat. So shall we start?
Yep. I guess like or shall we wait like 3 minutes, just like to give like 5 minutes, like to the guys, like to start?
Okay, okay, okay.
Yep.
No issues, no issues.
Yeah, just like 3 more minutes, because I'm seeing like a few like people like joining in. So
Okay. So in between, I'd like to introduce you two of our coordinators, Arijit Nandi and Nandan Banerjee. So Arijit is a PhD scholar in UPC Spain, and Nandan Banerjee is PhD scholar in Mines, our institute only.
Hello, Valerio.
Hi.
How are
How's
you?
it going? Yeah, all good.
Hi, Valerio. This is Nandan here.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah, all good here.
Very good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So yeah, first of all, guys, like thank you very much for like inviting me here. So yeah, it was like quite cool. So yeah, let's see like what comes out like of this session. So really excited.
Yeah, we are also excited. This is an opportunity for us actually.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We are glad.
thank you. Cool. That's cool. Okay, so Stefano says like Stefano Miscapi says he is working in a consultancy company, sometimes doing projects on audio and machine learning. Very interested in AI audio in general. Yeah, yeah. I think like it's a great place to be right now, like AI audio, and like in my case, like I'm more specialized. Like it's mainly like AI music, but I also do like some speech recognition and stuff. Oh, speech like more in general. But yeah, I think like the future is gonna be like bright for audio, given like a lot of research has been done like in image processing, right? And the focus of AI seems to be like there as well as like on I would say like text processing, but audio is kind of like catching up slowly but surely, which is great. Cool. So guys, shall we start?
Okay. So
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
So at the very beginning, okay. So at the very beginning, would like to welcome and would like to thank Valerio for accepting our invitation. It's really a great opportunity for all our SML group members as well as all those who have joined us from different institutes, different countries. And so as per the schedule, we'll be starting with the speaker introduction. So I'll start with the speaker introduction. So Dr. Valerio Velardo is a senior data scientist in Musimap, and he is an AI audio music engineer and consultant. He has completed his bachelor's from Sapienza Università di Roma and PhD from University of Huddersfield, Germany. He was also the founder and CEO of Melodrive and also associate editor and co-founder of the Journal of Creative Music System. He is also the creator of the Sound of AI YouTube channel, which is mainly focused on tutorials and applications of AI in audio space. So thank you, Valerio. So now I would like to hand over it to Nandan Banerjee to give a small introduction about SML Group. Thank you.
Hi, Valerio. Welcome again. And let me introduce regarding our group. SCML, Soft Computing and Machine Learning, is a WhatsApp group based that is created in 2019, and the pioneers are Arijit and Sandipan. They are the pioneers, and then after we have got a lot of members, and our main objective is to encourage the scientific and technical research related discussions among our group members. And obviously the discussion topics mainly includes artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and engineering optimizations. And at present, we have members from different premier institutes around India, that is IITs, NITs, IIITs, central government institutes, state government institutes, some private engineering institutes and universities, and some European technical institutes and USA from also. And this is our pleasure that we have Dr. Valerio Velardo today, and we will be really, it is a great that he is with us, and we will be having a lot of expertise and getting knowledge from him. Please, Sandipan, can we start and ask him to start?
Yes, sure. Yes.
Dr. Valerio, please, this is yours.
Okay.
And Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Yeah, once again, like, thank you very much for inviting me here. Like, thank you, Sandeepan. Thank you, like, all the other like organizers. So I'm gonna share my screen because I have a presentation. By the way, can you hear me okay? So is the volume level okay? All right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's clear.
So let me just share this. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yes, you can see.
Okay. So guys, I'm not gonna have like your like chat like here. So perhaps I can just like stop like at certain points, or like I don't know, like Sandeepan or the other organizers like can stop me like throughout like the presentation if they feel like there is like questions like that needs like an answer. But yeah, let's get started. So yeah, the title like of this presentation of this session is AI Audio University versus AI Audio in the Real World: Challenges, Pitfalls, and Opportunities. So some of you guys may know me through the Sound of AI YouTube channel. And so perhaps you know that I do like a lot of like coding stuff, like theory behind like AI audio, music, information retrieval, generative music, this kind of stuff, right? But today I'm not going to do like anything technical. So it's something like different. I want to share like a little bit of my experience, like being a researcher like in AI, specifically music, like a university, and what I call like the real world. But before like I actually get started with the presentation itself, I want to give you like a little bit of context about myself, because that will help you like understand where I come from and where all of these opinions come from. So this is a very important building for me. So here, like I traveled all the way north, like from Italy to the UK, and this is like a building that's in the north of England, specifically like in Huddersfield. So this is the University of Huddersfield, and this is like the music building. So this is like where I did my PhD in AI music, and specifically here, like I spent behind like these windows, I don't know how many hours doing research like in AI music. And so in all of this period, I kind of like grew experience in what it means to be like an AI researcher, AI music researcher, specifically in my case, at university, right? So then fast forward a few years, and now like I'm in this room, which is 8,000 kilometers, if not more, away from that building. And so I'm in California. You can see me there, like in that little like square, like red square, and I'm addressing a room full of investors in Silicon Valley. So in the meantime, so like what I did was like founding a company called Melodrive, where we did some kind of like AI music. I'll tell like a few things more about this like during the presentation, but basically like we had the opportunity to go like to San Mateo, which is like a little town like in near or basically like in Silicon Valley. And so we went to like this, we attended this accelerator called Boost VC, which was like a great opportunity. And here like I'm at the demo day pitching like a bunch of like investors in yeah, here like in Silicon Valley. That was like a great experience. But all of this to say what? Well, to say that like over the last like 7 years or so, I've been like a little bit of over the place doing like research like in what I love doing, so which is AI music. And what I understood like from this continued experience at university and like in the startup world is this. So AI audio, or AI in general at uni, is radically different from AI audio in the real world. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean specifically is that you can, at least like my experience with this is that like you can take a look like at these two worlds and think of them like as the yin and the yang in a sense. So they're very complementary. So what you need as skills, as procedures, as activities for being like a great researcher, like AI music researcher at university is not necessarily the same that you need for being like a great AI music engineering and being like successful, whatever that means, like in a kind of real world setting. Now, I'm using the real world like locution here, like a statement here, but what does that mean in my case? Well, for me, that just like reflects my own experience. And by real world, I mean just like the startup environment. So all of the opinions that you'll see like during the course of this presentation are related with my personal experience in the real world, but in a kind of like startup environment. And so let me tell you what we're going to touch upon, today. Okay, so what I want to do is just like do a kind of like a comparative analysis of the experience of working in academia, doing like this type of research, like in AI music, and doing the same thing in the real world or in the startup environment. And so I'm going to talk about like what I think like are the main goals, the main drivers, like for these two enterprises. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about like the different approaches, the pitfalls, the opportunities that you have like in both of these environments. And finally, I'm going to give you like some unsolicited advice of how to transition like from one place to another, namely like from university to the startup or like real world, right? And yeah, so this is like a little bit like of a plan of what we'll be touching upon. And here you just say, you already say like this slide here. And I'd like for this session like to be really like interactive in the sense like that you guys like can ask me like a lot of questions, and I'd love like to answer to all of those. Again, this is not a technical like talk or anything like that. And it's what I'm gonna tell you is just like personal opinions. Some of you probably have already like experienced like in both of these worlds, and probably will have like opinions that are kind of different from what I have, but and it's totally fine because I mean this is just like some personal experience and everyone is entitled to have like their own. So guys, like feel free like to share like comments like in the chat. I see like whether like I'll just like stop myself or perhaps like Sandeepan like will stop me throughout the presentation, just like for tell me like if there are like questions, or otherwise we'll have, or for sure we're going to have like a Q&A session like at the end of the presentation. Okay, so now let's get started like with the real stuff. Okay, so the first thing is about like goals, right? So I come from Italy. I go to, and obviously like in Italy, I had like my fair share like of academic like background, right? So I did a degree in physics and astrophysics, have been in a lot of like degrees, master's degrees, like in the conservatoire doing like music, because like at the core, I'm a musician, right? And then I moved to the UK, and here like I entered like this really cool place, like this really cool university, and I entered like this environment as a researcher and doing like research. So I had an idea what that meant in terms of like the goal of my enterprise, like to just like to do research like in this very cool space that was like AI music. So like my idea was, okay, so my goal is to expand knowledge, just push the horizon of knowledge a little bit further and make my mark there, right? Okay, so this was my initial idea. And then when I went on and founded Melodrive, and I kind of like transitioned to the startup world, the real world, I thought, I know what's the goal like for me being in a startup company, and it's building great technology. So having an impact by building great technology. Now, it turns out that I probably was wrong like in both of these assumptions. So this like in a kind of like ideal world probably is like what it means like to do like research like at university and like to do research and having like an impact in a company, but really there's something else that actually pays the bill. So, and by what pays the bill here, I mean like the main drivers like that actually push your activity as an AI audio and a researcher at uni and in the real world. So regarding uni, it really like kind of like boils down to publishing. And this has like both like good sides and bad sides. Some of this like we're going to analyze like in further slides, but basically what you have to think is that of course, like expanding the knowledge is like the high goal like there, but the actual main currency is publishing. You have to publish, because just by publishing, you can get like money in through grants and other stuff, or for government grants and things like that. But yeah, so if you want to survive there, you have to publish. So, and this was like an interesting like discovery like that I had, and it's probably one of the things that then pushed me towards the other side of the moon, so the startup world. Now, about that, what I discovered after like a few months of activity, like work on my startup, is that you're not really like building great technology as an end to a goal. You're building great technology as a means to an end, right? And the actual final end, the main driver, is that of like solving customers' problems. And this is something like that people like us, coming like from a very technical background, sometimes like struggle with, right? So we think that we have a great idea and that we are going to build like some really cool technology that's going to be like sold by itself almost, like because it's so great and it's so cool. But actually, that's not how like things work like in that environment. It's a quite like rough environment, and you have to put like customers at the center of everything you do. And in the end, your kind of like guiding star is this idea that your driver should be solving customers' problems. If you do that well, then it's perfect. You're gonna just like sustain yourself, grow, and have a lot of success. If you don't do that, well, I mean, that's probably the startup environment is not necessarily like for you. Okay. But now let's take a look at this like two different drivers, so publishing and solving customers' problems. Now, if we think as these two elements as two kind of like drivers, we can understand that from these like descend different approaches to work as an AI audio researcher, like in university and in the startup world, and different like work ethics. So now let me get a little bit more specific here. So as I said, like we have these contrasting approaches. So let's take a look at my experience. And I think like it's the experience that many people also had in academia. So when you are like doing research like in academia, so a great thing about that is that you can have like wild exploration. So you can work like on so many different topics. You can have like a lot of fun like doing all of that. And really there are not many like constraints most of the time. As part of like this approach, is this a thing here that I put as solving simplified problems. So what do I mean by that? Well, of course, like you're going to solve like certain problems, like as an AI audio researcher, probably you're going to create like a new like speech recognition algorithm, or like a music genre classification algorithm, like that's better like than the previous one or the state of the art. But in most cases, you're going to be kind of like simplifying the problem in a way that it's kind of like manageable. And so you're basically going to like cut corners and everything. And the reason why is that the case is because you don't need to generalize. This is not a product that you're building that should be used by hundreds, thousands, or tens of millions of people. It's just like some research that pushes that knowledge boundary a little bit further. Now, one thing that's quite typical in the AI music space, and I guess like also like in speech, is that we at university we tend to work like with relatively like small to medium-sized data sets. Now, this is not necessarily like a choice, but it's because like most of the data sets openly available to researchers are small and medium-sized. And so with this like comes like the good thing, which is like you don't really need to care that much about like scalability, robustness, like flexibility of your solution. And just like to kind of like synthesize like all of these different points, you could say like that we when we do AI audio research at uni, we really don't care that much about production really at all. And this is something that I realized when then I moved on to the startup world. And here we have like some of the approaches that I found like to be like very yeah, important when you work like in the real world. So, I mean, first of all, you can't really like do like a wild exploration. Most of the time, you'll have like to focus on one problem. So, and why is that the case? Because the driver here, once again, is instead of like solving a customer problem, and you want like for the customer to be satisfied, and for that to happen, you can't just like create like a solution that solves a simplified version of the problem. You have to kind of like solve the problem with all of its complexity as is, like in the real world. And this basically means that you have to catch most corner cases. So you do need to generalize like this time around. But the great thing here is that instead of like working with small to medium size data sets, most of the time, if you're working like for a company, like as an employee, or if you're building like your own AI audio company, hopefully you're going to have like large data sets. And so, yeah, that is like a great like thing to have. But at the same time, that comes like with a lot of like hassle and issues like regarding like scaling the solution and things like that, that when you are at university, you don't need to care about. And then the final point, I think, like is such an important one. It's such like a difficult one, like to comprehend when you are at university. Production is everything. At the end of the day, yeah, the solution, like the algorithm in and of itself is important, but more important than the algorithm, I found to be the kind of like production stack that you have, so that you can deliver whatever your algorithm you have in a way like that's flexible, that's robust, that's reliable, and that's scalable to the customer, so that the customer can solve its kind of like business problem, right? So as you can see, like these two approaches directly descend from the two different drivers. So here, the focus is on like creating as many like applications or like solutions as you can, like in the academic side, because you want to publish as much as you can. Here, the focus is on going like on one single problem and try to solve it as best as you can. And this is because the end driver here of the whole like enterprise is that of like solving a customer problem. Okay, so I know this potentially can feel a little bit like abstract, so I'm going to give you like an example that I had like in my experience like working like in the real world. So we had like this one client. It's basically like a company that does it has like a desktop application that you can use like for tagging and for storing like all your audio samples. And by audio samples here, I don't mean like audio data samples, but I mean like audio samples in the sense of like music production. So you have like samples, loops that you can use like to create music. So this is like an application for music producers who need like to just like have like some kind of like order in their gigabytes and gigabytes of audio samples that they use to produce their music. And so this application enables you like to kind of like create, to tag things like automatically and to search like these audio samples, perhaps like by genre. So you say, hey, give me all the audio samples in the EDM style or in the rock style, or give me all the audio samples that have like a certain BPM, certain musical speed, okay? And one of the things that they were lacking was a music instrument classification system that enabled them like to kind of like tag all of these samples with the relative instruments. Now, I'm assuming like most of you guys are familiar with this problem, music instrument classification. Hey, it's quite intuitive, right? So you have like an audio file, it can be a song, it can be like an audio sample, it can be a loop, whatever you want. You pass it through like a machine learning algorithm. It can be like a neural network, but it doesn't necessarily need to be so. And then you get out a the instrument, right? In this case, like for example, it's a synthesizer, okay? So now let's try to like do a comparison between what it takes like to build like a solution for a research paper, like in music instrument classification, and the same thing that we actually did with this one customer, real customer. Okay, so let's start with the MIC, so music instrument classification for a research paper. So what you usually get here is you have like a solution that has to classify between 10 to 20 instruments. Obviously, this is not always the case, but yeah, most papers regarding like this problem, you'll have like something like this. So this is the order of magnitude we are dealing with. Then you oftentimes you'll be dealing with one instrument samples. So each audio sample, you only have like one instrument. It could be guitar, it could be a drum kit, but it's rarely the case you have like both together. And the data set that you'll be working with, it's kind of like homogeneous. So like duration is the same, recording setting oftentimes like is the same if the data set has been prepared like in-house. Okay, so now let's compare that against what we had to do for this real world project with this one company. So we had 110 plus instruments to classify. And so this exploded like the complexity of the problem. So we had both one-shots and loops as audio samples. So perhaps some of you are familiar with like both of these types of audio samples, but in a nutshell, so one-shots are single notes. So for example, you have like a C5 piano key, that's a one shot. It lasts like for like, I don't know, like half a second, or if it's sustained for 2 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever, but it's a one shot. It's only one note. Or it could be like a kick drum sound, and that's it. And loops, instead of more extended like sounds where you have musical phrases really, and it could be like a vocal line that extends for a few bars or measures, and it also has like a longer duration, obviously, right? Here we're talking about like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, even 30 seconds, or it could be like a beat, right? A drum kit with a beat with a bass, right? And so we had to handle both of these cases. And as you can see, like it's kind of like quite different, right? So one shots are very different from loops. Samples were of different lengths. We had multi-instrument samples, and we had to just like say what's like the main instruments like in this sample. So as you can see, like there's a lot of like corner cases here. And all in all, you can say that the data set was very heterogeneous because this large data set came directly from the users of this application who would put their sounds like onto upload their sounds onto this application, and then you would do like analysis at that point. So you would have like different recording settings, different kind of like effects that the different users would use and stuff like that. So all of this to say that like just taking a look at the problem is very different from what you would do like in AI audio like university setting, whereas or comparing that against like the same research but in a project, in a real world project. Okay, so now let's take a look at what like the solution may look like in both cases. So in the case like in the academic case, like say the paper, so what you would do probably, you have like a quick and dirty script to extract audio features, perhaps using an audio processing library like Browser or Accenture. Then you would have another script to train the model, yeah, perhaps using TensorFlow. And if you are, if you care a lot about like separating like stuff, you may have like a third script to run predictions, always like in TensorFlow. Sometimes like I saw like some of the code bases like associated like with papers in music information retrieval or AI music in general or AI audio, and it was like a coding horror, because basically you would have like this one script that did everything. So you would have like 1,000 plus like lines of code that did everything. So now that is not a problem like in academia, because I mean, at the end of the day, you're not serving a customer. So you don't need to scale or have a solution that's robust, but that is like a big issue in the real world environment. And now let me show you for a comparison what we actually built like in our real world project. So first of all, we had to build a custom audio feature extraction pipeline, and this was done like in C++ and had to code all of the different algorithms for extracting like the different audio features. And then on top of that, we built a kind of like API so that like the guys could nicely use the all of this like pipeline in a very like straightforward manner. Then we built a deep learning pipeline, and this was like in Python, but the guys like couldn't use that directly in their application. So what we had to do was like building the inference system using C++ and packaging everything like as a DLL. So we had basically like to kind of like implement the whole like networks like in architectures that we built directly like in C++, starting like from Python. And that wasn't all that we had to do. We also had to create like this kind of like interface between Python and C++ because they wanted to have like a GUI in C++ that could actually show the results like of the different stuff like that we classified in real time. Okay, so as you can see here, there's a lot going on in terms of like production. So here, like the the core of the system is hidden inside of this like deep learning pipeline. And that is like what you would mostly focus on when you are in academia. But when you are like in the real world, that is just like one part of a very bigger system, okay? So, and this wasn't even taking into consideration like the kind of like data management, and because we didn't have to do that. But now imagine you also have to kind of like manage like data, incoming data, and there you would have like something like this, another component that does like data acquisition, then it does like data validation, data cleaning, data storage, and I mean, you name it, right? And so, and this is all stuff, pre-processing stuff that you would do even before getting to audio pre-processing, right? And it's a whole stack that you don't have to care about when you are like in academia. So now, after a few projects like this, then I kind of like realized like that there was like a difference between like AI audio and in academia and AI audio like in a real world environment. So I can't just like synthesize like this difference by using a couple of pictures. So I feel like this was like me at university. So I'm riding this bike and I'm doing like super cool things and focusing only like on the road and everything. And this is me like in the real world, right? So you have all of this weight like behind you, right? So you can't just like focus on what you think like is the really cool stuff, which is just like building great models, great algorithms, and focusing on the core of the research and the problems. But now after a while, I mean, like you grow fond also like of the things like around like the actual solution. So all the stuff like that you need to build like for putting like that solution into production. But yeah, all in all, like I say, like this is like the kind of like the main difference like in approach is like the complexity of the problem, as well as like the ability to put a solution in production, have it scaling, have it like robust, and have it reliable. Now you may be wondering, but well, Valerio, so well, why did you decide to move like from uni to the real world? Like if you thought like that you would get like all of this hassle from the real world? Well, it's more complicated than that, and the answer to that question. But and the main point here is that when I was like at university, like towards like the end of my PhD, I started to kind of realize that there are like many pitfalls like doing AI audio research like at in an academic environment. So let me tell you like a few of those that I hit. And again, this is just like personal stuff. You may have like a completely different experience than mine. So the first one may feel like a little bit weird, right? So you spend a PhD on a topic, and perhaps you spend 3, 4, 5 years like on that one topic. So you really dig a problem deep, don't you? Well, I don't agree with that, because I mean, when I came out like of my PhD, yeah, of course I had like a lot of experience like in generative music and stuff like that, but I had really zero experience in how like to kind of like put that I would say like that problem into practice and all of like the practicalities like that we saw like earlier. So in a sense, yes, of course, like you spend a lot of time like digging into one problem, but at the same time, I feel like you're not digging like enough. You're not seeing like the whole picture really. And the second point for me like was very frustrating. You can't really avoid the bad stuff about the publishing craze. So as I said, like the main currency, the main driver in academia is publishing. This is not only true like for AI, audio AI, but it's true like across the board. But I think like this is like somewhat problematic, and I'm sure like you'll be familiar with this. Like you just go also like to top conferences, you skim through like some papers and you see like there's a lot of garbage there, right? Because people are not kind of like pushed to necessarily like expand knowledge as the main goal, but rather like to publish, because the more you publish, the better it is, which basically means like people tend to publish a lot of garbage. As long as you have like a little epsilon increase in quality on something, you just like publish it. And sometimes you don't even need to have like that epsilon like of improvement. And so I feel like this publishing enterprise on the one hand is great because you're sharing like research, but I think like it's been like distorted like over time. And now like we just like see that whatever shitty idea you may have, you just like put it out, because at the end of the day is not the quality of the idea of that solution that you put out, but it's more about, yeah, having that paper published in that conference and then the other conference and then the other conference, right? And that is something like that I really don't like, because it's just like jumping like from one little like system to another, putting it out, and just like to have all of these like tiny rewards. Yeah, okay, I have like a paper here, I have a paper there. Wow, it's great, but I don't feel it's going to make an impact on society. And this is like the other major problem that I had. So I felt that all I was doing was something that remained within the walls of academia and couldn't. And I thought, well, I'm building like this really cool AI music technology. Is it possible that there's no way of having like other people like enjoying like the effort that I'm putting into developing all of this stuff? Is it? I don't know. Like, is it supposed to remain within academia? And that is something like that put me off like quite a lot. And then another thing that I found, another pitfall, is like this inertia to change. I don't know, like this may be like different from like different countries, but like in my experience when I was in the UK, so towards the end of the PhD, we did create like this amazing community around like generative music with academics like and everything. And so myself and my supervisor started to push within the university to have like a research center there on generative music, because we were seeing that the kind of like the research wave was also going like in that direction. You had at that point a number of startup companies that were interested like in the topic, and other like bigger companies like Google, then Amazon, or IBM getting like into the problem. So we thought like this would be like a great idea. So we had a very strong case, but like in the end we couldn't do like anything. We couldn't like put together like that research group because of like the inertia that we found within like the management food chain like of the university. And then another like pitfall that I had sometimes was like working on your own. On the one hand, that is great, like because you are in charge of yourself basically. But on the other hand, I mean, you sometimes like feel really like isolated, and you don't have like people to just like share like your research with, apart from when you go like at conferences or like in other like circumstances. Okay, so most of like these things like were like at the basis of why I decided then to jump into the real world, the startup world. Sorry guys. Sorry guys. Yeah, just like give me a sec. Forgot to put like my phone inside. Just did it. Sorry. Okay. So, sorry. Okay.
No issues. It is okay.
Okay, I'll just move on. Okay, so and as I said, like this was like what pushed me towards like the real world. And but there, like after a few years, like being like involved in that, like, I found like that there are pitfalls also there. So I had like this ideal, I would say like conception like of the real world or of a startup company. But then reality hit, and there are like pitfalls also there. So first of all, sometimes like you can feel as if you are being stuck on a problem. And that once again comes with the idea that you have to serve like a customer problem. So once you find that problem, you have to just like solve the problem as best as you can, which basically means you have to spend a lot of time on that. And so you can't necessarily explore new topics freely. And this is once again like kind of connected with this third point. Somebody else sets your goals. And now I was, when I was at MeloDrive, I was the CEO of the company. So you would assume, yeah, you are the CEO, you set the goals, right? Yeah, that's more or less true, but you have a lot of constraints. Constraint number one, investors. So yeah, from that room that I showed you before, like there, like in Silicon Valley, we were like lucky enough like to raise like a seed round. And so we came back here to Berlin. And yeah, and we started just like doing like our research and development like activity. But we took that money for doing like generative music mainly, or for being like in AI music. Now, if I want to just change like the goal of like the scope of the research and doing like something else, yeah, I would have like a relatively like hard time like selling this like to investors. Of course you can do it, but I mean, you have to be accountable, and you have to just like make your case. But I mean, beyond investors, because that's the list of the problems, the people who are setting your goals in a sense or implicitly are the customers. Remember, guys, like when you are in the startup world, you are serving your customers' problems. So sometimes like you may see that these problems are not necessarily aligned with what you like the most, right? And so you have to just like align your research, your development to things that you don't necessarily like 100%. So to give you an idea here, so we were doing a lot of like development and research like in AI music generation. And so we built MeloDrive Indie, which is like this generative music system that uses AI for generating music for video games. But then we saw that for one reason or another, like we didn't get like a lot of traction with that. And so we had to change direction like of the company, and we went into like a consulting, AI audio consulting. So yeah, we kind of like liked AI audio consulting, but that wasn't like the thing that we wanted to do like mainly, right? And we had to adapt because of like market reasons, and because we weren't necessarily like solving the most crucial customer problem there. Connected to that, there's this idea of like dealing with clients. So sometimes clients like are fantastic, right? Customers are just like great, and it's a pleasure like to work with them. But sometimes like they are total, it's a big hassle, I would say, right? And that is just because like you're dealing like with other human beings that are like outside of your like bubble, right? And then you may have like misunderstandings, communication problems, or having like clients that don't understand like what you do. So I mean, all of these things have to be factored in, whereas like when you are like in academia, you don't even know that there is like such a person that's like a client or a customer, right? And so that can be a pitfall. Sometimes I also like found like inertia to change like within the startup world, right? And that can come from like a number of different like sources, but mainly it's like from the team itself, I would say, right? Because if you want to like have like a major change, you can't just say, okay, yeah, so from today on, we'll just like move from A to B, and everyone is gonna just like say, oh, okay, yeah, let's move from A to B. No, you have to convince people that moving from A to B like makes sense, and that like takes time, effort. And so sometimes even like in small startups, you have like inertia, right? And finally, like a pitfall can be working in a team. So working in a team is fantastic, don't get me wrong, but sometimes like, I mean, you depend like on other people. You may have like team members that are not, you don't like get along very well with. But yeah, so I mean, as you can see, like there are like pitfalls both like in the academic world and the real world. There's no like ideal environment, but I don't want to like paint like a pitch dark picture here, right? But what I'm gonna say is that like these pitfalls do exist, but they are, I think, like they're way less than the opportunities that you get like from working as an AI audio researcher in both of these environments. So let's take a look at the opportunities here. So let's start with the academic environment. So the sky's the research limit. So at least like this was like my personal experience. So when I was doing my PhD, as I think I mentioned, guys, so I was doing like generative music research for like developing like this system for rock music generation. But then at the meantime, I was doing a bunch of like music cognition experiments. At the same time, I was even interested in some kind of like philosophy of AI music. And I could do like all of these things, setting my own pace, and I could really work on the stuff that I liked. And I think like this is like such an advantage that you have like working in academia. That's just like fantastic. You're free to do whatever you like. Obviously, it's not always the case like this, because sometimes you may just like work in a more structured team, in a more structured situation, and then you have constraints. But by and large, I would say like that this is like usually like what happens. Now, let's move on to the opportunities that you have like in the real world. So for me, like the main one was like having an impact on society. So you build some great technology, and if you do like your work well, and if you're solving like a customer problem, a crucial one, then you're going to have an impact. And for me, there's nothing more important than having an impact on other people who could benefit from my work. And in the process, you can learn a ton of stuff. I can't tell you like how many, I don't know, like tech stuff like I've learned, like in terms of like the technological stack. I didn't know much about like cloud computing when I came out like of my PhD. Now, like I'm very fluent like in all the AWS like web solutions, or like in Google Cloud and all of this kind of stuff, right? And not to mention like a bunch of like different like libraries that you use, like, or utility libraries or stuff like that you can use like in your everyday job. And another thing that I loved about like being like in a startup, it's that you really don't know what you're going to be finding yourself in a day or two. You may find yourself like in situations you would never imagine. When I started like MeloDrive, I would never have imagined that in a few months I would find myself like in front of a room full of like Silicon Valley investors, and that I would even get like an appointment like with Sequoia, which is like one of the most important like VCs like in Silicon Valley, right? And not just that, but also like the people that I met through like this experience. And I don't think like this is like something that's related only when you are that is true only like if you are a co-founder, but also like if you work like in the real world, in the startup world. So many things like are gonna happen. So one thing like in this respect that I want to mention, so we hired a fantastic sound designer at MeloDrive. So he didn't have like any experience as a programmer. So during like his 2 years with us, he became like a very good like Python and C# programmer. And when we kind of like when he left the company, so he found a position at Ubisoft as a programmer. So could he ever imagine like doing like that kind of like leap from one thing like to another? I don't think so, right? But still, like it happened, and this guy wasn't like a co-founder. So another thing that I really loved, like in my experience, like in the real world, was like just like developing a lot of like non-technical skills. And here I'm talking about just like understanding like how business works, or like how product management works, or improving like, your communication skills, your public speaking skills. And these are things that you'll pick up naturally while you're like doing like this type of work. And finally, one thing that I really love, but I guess like this is me, wearing 1,000 hats. So yeah, I guess like when you're working like in a startup, well, you have to wear like 1,000 hats. And one day you'll be focusing like on I don't know, like some kind of like data wrangling. The day after, you'll be focusing on like I don't know, like deploying a solution on Flask, for example, or Django, right? So you are going to be involved in so many interesting activities, and so that's like something wonderful that I find. Okay, so now one thing that I want to talk about, guys, is give you like a few tips about like transitioning like from university to the real world. And these are things like that I hope like I wish like I knew like when I did like this this transition. So I'm hoping like you can find like some of these useful, and let me know like then like in your questions. So the first thing, so learn software development best practices, right? So we already saw this, right? So if you're working on a research paper, it really doesn't, it's not that important that you adhere, let's say, great like software development practices, like design patterns, like or stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, like you can just like have a solution with a simple like script, and that's enough. But that is absolutely not the case for the real world. You need to be a great engineer, software engineer, to be very successful, to build like a solution that's scalable, robust, and you won't like spend millions of years then trying to maintain that. And I've seen this problem coming like time and again, like in my experience, like in the real world, like finding like certain like code bases which were like in a horrendous like state. It seemed like you were just like navigating a ton of like spaghetti code and stuff like that, and then you come in and you don't really know what's going on. So that is one thing like to really keep in mind. Then second point, so know your way like in data engineering. Yeah, if you are doing like AI audio research or engineering like in the real world, you really want to know how to store data, manage data, wrangle data, all the technologies that are like around like this this topic. So basically, I don't know, like AWS S3, for example. So knowing how you can connect to buckets, like dump stuff, and all of these things, this is going to be like invaluable for you in a real world setting. And then the third point is becoming a hacker. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, you should be one who picks up like technical skills like real quick, and then like being able like to putting them together so that you can arrange like a solution, even if you didn't have like any idea before you started like that. So that is like a fantastic skills to have like in the real world that you don't necessarily need to have like at university. Then another point, you should hone your social skills. I know, I mean, myself, like I'm a quite introverted like person, but I mean, like when you are like in a startup environment, you have to be like very communicative. You have to be like a team player, and you need to communicate like clear. Sometimes like at university, you don't need to do this. Like for example, like a very dear person of that I know, who's like a professor like at university. So he's a fantastic researcher. He does an incredibly insightful like research in music theory, but he doesn't have like great social skills, like to use like a euphemism. But still, like he's doing great like in university, because yeah, I mean at the end of the day, you do like your research, that's great, but in a startup environment, no, you really have to have like social skills, and you really have to be able like to talk to clients, to talk to other people, to talk to investors, and yeah. Okay, and this one, I think like it's a central one. So we come from a technical background, and I assume like most of the people who are like attending this webinar, right? So we I don't know, like we think like that the engineering side is everything, but the moment like you move into the real world, you really have to familiarize like with business and product procedures. And why is that the case? Well, because whatever you are doing is not whatever like development and research you're doing is not like an end in itself, but is a means to an end, is a means to serving the customer's problem. And so you want to have an understanding of how to work like with, or how to deal like with business problems, how to talk to customers, how to manage like a product pipeline, understanding how certain features are more important than others in a product because you talk to customers, right? So this has happened to me like a few times already. Basically, like I was in this situation where like this one company like had like the engineering side, AI audio side, like completely separate from the business side. The two worlds didn't communicate at all. And I mean, we were just like enjoying like some great time doing like great, I would say, development, but then that development probably most of the time was just like wasting resources and energy because we weren't like following like the main goal, which is that of like serving customers' problems. So yeah, do become familiar with business and product procedures and frameworks. And finally, I would suggest this one. So learn to share tears and celebrate as a team. Yeah, if you want to work in the real world, being a team player is fundamental. So yeah. Okay, so now I guess like we're kind of like approaching like the end like of this presentation, and I'm curious to see like if you guys have like questions or whatever. But before we get there, I'm anticipating like a couple of questions that you may have. So first is one directed like to me, and it's Valerio. Do you prefer like working at university or like in the real world? And yeah, and I could just like reverse like this question and ask you guys what would you like to do, and do you think like which one do you think like it's best for you? I mean, like in my personal experience, what I have to say now, after having like spent a little bit of time like in both of these two worlds, is that they're both great. And as we saw, like they both have like pitfalls, they have great opportunities. And in the end, to me, what I realized is that I really don't care that much about the environment itself. What I do care is about like the what I do and why I do it. So what I really found is that's like the key for me is that wherever I am, it could be university, it could be like a startup company, it could be enterprise. I mean, probably not enterprise, but yeah, who knows? But for me, the important thing is just like to do what I love doing. And for me, it's like this triangle here, like doing something that has to do with music, audio, something that has to do with coding, and something that has to do with AI. So as long as I do something like this and I can have an impact on the world, then I'm more than happy like to explore like new worlds. So it's not really about like which environment you prefer the most necessarily, but it's more what do you like to do? What are you passionate about? And just like follow like your passion. I think like that's the kind of like takeaway that I would like to live here. Okay, and talking about like having like impacts like on other people. So for me, obviously it was like through like the real world, but then probably some of you like may know this, like this year I started like the Sound of AI like YouTube channel, and there I'm hoping like to have like a little bit of impact on like many guys or many people who want to get introduced like to all things like AI audio, AI music, audio processing, music generation, and stuff like that. So if you're not subscribed, I highly suggest you like to go check out like this channel, my channel, so the Sound of AI. And one final thing, if you want to go like the extra mile, do subscribe to the Sound of AI Slack workspace, and there like you'll have like a community of people interested in AI, audio, music, who just like give you feedback and can share their projects freely. Okay, so I guess like this was like my presentation. So yeah, I'm open to questions if there are any, and I hope there are many.
Hello, Valerio. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for a nice presentation and talk. So we have a lot of questions. So I have collected in a notepad. So how would you like me to read one by one and then or?
Yeah, I have them here. So first of all, I think like, am I still sharing the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I think like I can like stop the presentation, right?
Okay.
Okay, so you guys like can see me. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay. Yeah, I guess like here, like, so we have like questions in the chat, right?
Yes, we have all the questions in the chat. So maybe what I can do, I have collected all the questions in between. So I'm going to paste very long text in this chat. having
Okay.
all the questions with the names. So I
Okay.
think now,
Yeah, I guess.
yes, I just, oh,
Yeah, so I guess like yeah, can you just like choose the questions, like for example?
okay. There are a lot. So I'm going one by one. So Akash, he is requesting to help with the voice activity detection concept for continuous audio signal. Hello,
Okay.
Akash. Can you please turn on your mic and camera? Hello, Akash. Are you here? Okay. So we are moving to the next.
Uh-huh.
Akash, can you please? Yeah, I'm trying. Okay, but not working. Okay, so we are moving to the next questions regarding your JC. Questions regarding your research at uni. Is there a AI paper you published which you particularly liked?
Yeah, I think like my PhD thesis in the end, I'm very fond of like that thesis, and I published quite a lot. Like I think like something like more than 10, 15, around 15 papers like when I was at uni, and I published a little bit like everywhere, as I said. So some stuff like was obviously like in music generation stuff, some stuff like was in kind of like computational musicology, other things like more music cognition. But I think like the thing that I'm the most proud of like is the thesis that somehow like I would say like stitches together like all of these different like interests that I had like at the time. Yeah.
Next question is Stefano. What about business opportunities for AI audio? Do you find the startup landscape to be very crowded or competitive already, or are most business idea in this field still unexplored?
Yeah, I would think the latter is the actual answer. So I see that there's a lot of opportunity right now, like in AI audio, not just like AI music. And the stuff that we are doing is just like scratching the surface. And as I said at the beginning, like of this session, so I think like that there's a lot that has been done and is being done like in image processing and all stuff that's related to AI and images or videos, but not necessarily like with audio. So to give you like a couple like of examples here, like so for example in like my line of research, so like generative music, I think like that some stuff has been done, like, and we did some of that also, like with MeloDrive, like in generating like music in a decent way. But I think like there's a huge like unexplored path there, which is that of like generating like music like in a real time based off like, for example, like the feeling like of the person at that specific moment based like on the weather, like of stuff like that, right? Then recommender systems, right? So I don't know like your experience like with Spotify recommendation and stuff like that, but at least for me, it sucks completely. And I think like there's a lot to improve there. And then like if you want to move like to like more like audio, like in general, I think like all the audio interfaces are going to be big, and definitely they're going to be big also because of this like COVID problem that we are like having like at the moment, because I mean like voice audio is going to be probably the interface of choice, I would say, because you don't need to touch stuff, and so that's kind of like also like more secure, more safe. Yeah.
So next question is from Stephen. Were the C++ DLLs called directly from Python? If so, do you have any advice for managing the combination and interface in between the algorithms implemented in the DLLs and the interfaces in Python?
Okay, yeah. So let me just like reread this.
It's Stephen.
Yeah. No, I said that. So
Yeah.
do you have any advice for managing the combination and interfacing between the algorithms implemented in the... Okay, yeah. So regarding like the first question, so where the C++ DLLs called directly like from Python. So there, let me remember like what we did there. So I think like it was, so we had like in this GUI, in this GUI, like we had like the ability just like to code Python like through like a C++ like API regarding like the type of like integration that you can have like between like C++ and Python. I think like there are like different like approaches. So I can't remember like which one like we went for, because I wasn't like the one like in charge like of that side. So I don't think like I'm the best person like to answer that question like right now. So I'll have like just like to check like what we did like at that point.
Okay, so next question. Okay. Okay, it's from Oishin Datta. Do you have a great product you are currently working on, or MeloDrive is working on launching something?
Okay, so I left MeloDrive for a number of reasons. So I'm no longer like with that company. So now I'm working as a data scientist like for another AI music company that's called Musicmap. So I think there like we are working like on some cool stuff. So I joined that product like was already like in place, and it's like this cool product that enables you like to do analysis like of audio tracks, so getting like moods, getting genres and things like that. So basically we are kind of like improving like what we had done, what the guys like had developed before like I joined the company. So yeah, but basically like that's what I'm up at like right now. But this is like kind of like employee job. So yeah, that is kind of like my current line of work. Yeah.
Okay, the next question is from Steven. As an anecdotal example, I went from undergrad to real world, and the key was having existing projects to reference, which allowed me to jump directly into raw real world projects. I think he just asked some questions beforehand. He's referencing.
Yeah, I think he was just sharing his experience. So
yeah, actually the question was mine. The question is that it's necessary to have academic experience before moving to the real world. Like, is it necessary to having a PhD, or you can jump straight to the real world from a college, undergrad, or maybe master's? What do you think, Valerio? Thanks for the talk, by the way.
Yeah, I think, yeah, this is a good one. So like in my experience, I found fantastic people who didn't have like that great of an academic experience. They were perhaps just like out of like a bachelor's degree. They joined a company and they just like grew their experience like there. So and I found like some of these people are great like at getting like things done. So and this is like something I don't know like if probably it's just like an anecdotal experience, but people who have like a lot of experience directly like in the real world are very good like at getting like things done, probably because they are like under like a lot of pressure. Like if they work like with a shitty manager saying, okay, so here's the deadline, do this like at this point in time, and just like don't miss the deadline, right? And that has happened to me to like meet this type of people quite a lot. But at the same time, I would say like that going through like a more structured like academic career can help you a lot in, because like you have like certain skills that are not necessarily easy to pick up like in the real world. Like for example, doing research or just like reading research, knowing what to read, knowing what to dump and say, okay, yeah, I'm reading like this paper. Yeah, this is just like total garbage, so I just don't care, let's move on to the next one. Or finding the gems. And as I said, right now like the environment, like the publication environment, like is quite crowded like with a lot of garbage. At least like this is like my my personal experience. And I think like that by doing research like in a kind of like structured way, like through a PhD or postdoc like that, it's going to help you like a lot there. And it's going to give you like a lot of flexibility and like build and a lot of like theoretical understanding that you don't necessarily have like if you don't come from there. So I would say like it's kind of like, I see like both sides. You can directly go and I guess like you're going to have like a lot of advantages over people who spend more time in academia. But at the same time, if your end goal is really like R&D, probably having like more of an academic background like is going to help you. Yeah.
Okay, so another question is from Miguel. For a beginner, what do you recommend to be your first audio or music AI project?
Fast audio AI music project. Yeah, I think like in my series, I think, yeah, I did like a music genre classification thing. I think like that's quite nice. So you have like a few data sets, like basic toy data sets that you can play around with. And yeah, music genre classification, it enables you like to be exposed to a bunch of different things. So for example, like the idea of like processing audio. So understanding a little bit about like audio processing and what you can do, what you should do. And then at the same time, like the machine learning like models there, you can experiment with different stuff. You can experiment with more traditional algorithms like support vector machines, and then move on to deep learning and see like if there's a difference and what's the difference. And so I think like it's a nice like self-contained problem. Now it can become extremely complicated. So for example, like at Musimap, like the company I'm currently working on, like we have, I don't know like how many genres or how many moods, right? But like in a smaller setting, like where you have like 10 different genres, like the main genres, say like classical, rock, hip hop, then it makes a lot of sense just like to start with something like that.
Okay. So can we take some questions more, or? It's in the real world. It's from Steven. In the real world, how do you deal with publishing your techniques in the academic space versus keeping them proprietary for a business advantage?
Yeah, this is like a very good one. So, and I have like an anecdote here. So I think like, so like in the co-founding team at MeloDrive, we had like very different approaches, probably because we were coming from different countries, and different countries, I think like have like different feelings and different like sensibilities regarding like this thing. So there was like one of the co-founders who was very afraid about like sharing information about like what we were doing. Whereas like myself and another co-founder, like we were 3 co-founders, by the way. So myself and another co-founder were way more open to the possibility of like sharing what we were doing. And I mean, at the end of the day, so what I came to realize, like doing like startup for like a few years, is that people really don't care that much about what you do. And so yeah, you can share stuff and people don't care. I mean, like this is like your endeavor. Most of the time you'll be seen like as the crazy guy, and no one is there like just stealing something. Yeah, obviously like it can happen sometimes, but most of the time you have to shout at people in their faces to have yourself heard. Imagine like if the same people would just like spend time like looking at your like implementations and then just like using that like for what goals. They may have like goals that are completely like different from yours, right? So in that respect, like my understanding, so if I had to like start again like a company, something like that, I would probably consider going full-blown like open source. And now with this experience that I'm having like with the community, the Sound of AI community, I'm saying just like the fact like, of being open and sharing is going to bring a lot of value. And also like if you go like the open source route, probably like you're going to have like a lot of people who are going to like helping you out like in towards like your goal in a sense. And I think like that this idea of like sharing is what, yeah, hopefully like the also like the industry is going to like move like towards.
Okay. So one last question, I think. What is the future of AI music generation, and how this technology will help human?
Right. Okay. So regarding like the future of AI music generation, I think we are like at an interesting like point in time here, because like I come from a background where I or like I use like in my startup, but also like in my research, like symbolic music generation. So basically you build something that resembles like a MIDI score. And for the ones who are not familiar with MIDI, it's just like a symbolic representation for describing a score. And then you sonify that somehow. You could use like audio samples, virtual instruments, whatever you want. So that is one approach. The other approach is the one that starts directly with audio. So it's a raw audio generation. So initially I was like very, very skeptical about like music generation directly from raw audio, but there has been like some advances like in that space, which are, I think, like are very interesting. So I think like it's not clear to me which direction like we're going to go, or if these two like lines of research are going to be like there like in parallel. But regardless like of the type of the technology that we use that to power these systems, I think like the most important thing is the approach that we'll have like on the markets and on people. And from like my experience at NanoDrive, at least I would say that like people are not necessarily like ready, or the market, I should say, like it's not necessarily ready for this type of technology. So because of a number of reasons, in the music industry, there's a lot of like skepticism about like innovation. And imagine if you have like an AI composer, so that's like something like mind-blowing for them. But beyond that is also like, I think like that there's no one who's like really interested, or no one who's really found a use case that's like the killer one, right? That you say, okay, so now we have like this use case, and because we have like this great application, we're going to have like wide adoption of like this new type of technology. This is a little bit like the same problem that virtual reality VR is having. So they don't have like that one hit video game, for example, that is going to draw a lot of people to buy VR headsets, right? And it's a little bit like the same. So yeah, we'll see. I don't have like an answer like to that.
Okay. Thank you. So I think it is done. Okay. So thank you again. So actually we have some sketch of yours. Small gift from us. So I'm going to present my screen to show you.
Oh, that's nice.
This is a sketch drawn by my sister. So
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. This is so nice. Thanks a lot. Yeah, please do share that.
Yes, I'm going to share this one. I will. We will send it through mail. Okay.
Okay. That's very nice. Very kind. Cool.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Can I request to turn off our cameras and take a little selfie, COVID-19 style, for the community group?
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, can you please repeat? Okay, we should turn on the cameras so we can take a selfie.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Okay.
It's 5 a.m. in Mexico, right here, by the way.
What's that, sorry? It's 5 a.m.
5 a.m.
5 a.m. here too.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot, guys, like for showing up. Yeah.
Thank you, Valerio. I'm in Italy. I'm having lunch. It's lunchtime almost. So.
Right. Yeah, it's lunchtime here as well.
Yes.
So that's cool. So yeah, by the way, guys, I hope like you had like you found like the whole presentation like useful, and you have like some insights and stuff like that.
Most of the group members, I'm talking about the SCML group members, are from academics, so we do not have any idea or experience about what are the real life challenges that one can have in industries. So thank you for giving us an idea about what one can face in, I mean, the challenges, real-time challenges that one can face in industry. So thanks a lot.
Cool. So are we taking this picture? So I guess like send it in.
So I'm going to share all of with all of you through mail, and I have recorded this session, so I will share the Google Drive link.
That's cool.
Okay, so I think we can end here by saying goodbye. Take care.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot.
Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.